We are live.
Hi,
Yay.
everyone.
We
Hello,
have
everyone.
Nimue, Sten, Verfaith, and Draco in the house today. Thank you all for coming. This is such a really special video that we're going to be doing. And I think that in a sense, it's kind of like a beacon call, like out to like the wider, maybe not necessarily the Tolkien community. It might even be the mythological community that we're looking for, because there is elements of mythos here. And by the way, I have something to tell you guys. I've been following an Irish, he's kind of a really pistol type of pagan kind of guy. His name is Thomas Sheridan. And he's a magician, uses Luciferian, I mean, like all kinds of stuff. I don't necessarily always resonate with him, but I've noticed that he, in his material, has been doing a deep dive into Tolkien and doing a lot of comparison of like events in Ireland that are matching up with a lot of Tolkien mythology, and he actually called it a mythology. And I'm like, how funny is that? Because we were just talking about this, right? So before we go, did you guys want to say hi to everybody? Like briefly, Dave, did you want to preface this for in any
Yeah,
way
I can
while
do
I?
that. Yeah. Well, basically, yeah. This article that I wrote, it's basically about thinking a different way of thinking. I'll go into it in a lot more detail in this paper, but basically, it's I want I want people with an inquiring mind that don't necessarily have to be Tolkien linguists or specialize in the lore or whatever, but they do have a central draw to any mythology, because I'm starting like a research and development group inside of Way of Artist lore, so that's basically what sparked this whole thought process and writing this article. So that's
Yeah. And I remember that we did have kind of a promising individual come forth on that at one point.
mhm.
Um, was his name Johannes, or I
Yeah,
don't remember. Yeah.
yeah. hmm
Yeah. So
Although
that's really cool.
my contact with him kind of dropped off. He didn't he stopped answering
Oh,
after a while. So
okay. I mean, I
yeah.
know that he's the right kind of person, but his schedule, or he's on the other side of the world,
hmm
like things like that. Like I realize the logistics can affect those things as well. But anyway, we'll start by loading up the presentation. And by the way, for any of you who want to follow it maybe on a separate screen, if you scroll down in the video description, you will see a HackMD article notation and a link. That is the link to this article. So if you guys want to do it that way. So I'm going to switch over to that, so that so I won't be able to see the comments unless I switch over, just letting you know. So I'm going to switch over to the Bombadil Mind, so that, see how I can scroll up and down. I can only do that when I'm not watching the video. So uh, anyway, Dekindre, did you want to say anything before I have Dave take it away?
No, I'm good at the moment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go, Dave.
Okay. Okay. Want to start reading?
Yep.
Okay. The Bombadil Mind, a different way of knowing. And then I have a little set aside onboarding for Way of Artist lore. The doors of perception are cleansed not by force, but by reverence for what lies beyond them. The problem with how we think. Imagine walking through an ancient forest. Most people approach this experience in one of three ways. The engineer asks, what resources are here? How can I use this wood, these plants, or this water? The storyteller asks, what does this forest mean to me? How does it fit into my personal journey or worldview? The artist asks, how can I capture this beauty? What can I create from this experience? Each perspective has value, but they share a crucial limitation. They immediately subordinate what they encounter to their own purposes. utility, narratives, or aesthetic creation. There is a fourth way, rare in our culture but essential for the work we do at Way of Arda's lore. It is embodied perfectly by one of Tolkien's most enigmatic characters, Tom Bombadil, the master of pure attention. Tom Bombadil often puzzles readers. He seems irrelevant to the grand quest, a whimsical interruption in an otherwise purposeful narrative. Yet Tolkien himself revealed Bombadil's true significance in a letter to his publisher. He is then an allegory or an exemplar, a particular embodying of pure, real natural science, the spirit that desires knowledge of other things, their history and nature, because they are other and wholly independent of the inquiring mind, entirely unconcerned with doing anything with the knowledge, that is to say, zoology and botany, not cattle breeding or agriculture. Even the elves hardly show this. They are primarily artists. And that's from letter number 153. Bombadil represents something extraordinary. Pure attention without agenda. He delights in knowing things simply because they exist, not because he can use them, weave them into his story, or transform them into art. When Bombadil encounters that same ancient forest, he asks, "What are you?" And then, crucially, remains content with whatever answer emerges, without needing to do anything with it. This isn't mere curiosity. It's a fundamentally different mode of consciousness that allows reality to reveal itself without distortion from immediate purposes. Why this matters for our work. Way of Arda's lore isn't an academic exercise or fantasy appreciation society. We're engaged in what we call mythic engineering, the practical work of perceiving and navigating the deeper structures of reality that mainstream culture either ignores or reduces to metaphor. Mythic engineering involves mapping mythic dimensions, receiving operational guidance from non-human intelligences, and engineering shifts in collective consciousness. This work requires a specific cognitive capacity, the ability to encounter unusual information, beings, or dimensional structures without filtering them through personal needs, beliefs, or aesthetic preferences. For example, a practitioner might receive detailed geometric instructions during a shamanic journey. If approached with utilitarian thinking, how can I use this? They might try to force the information into a predetermined framework. If approached narratively, what does this mean about me? They might project personal or psychological symbolism onto objective data. If approached artistically, how beautiful? They might prioritize the aesthetic experience over the operational content. With Bombadil cognition, however, they can receive the information cleanly, record it accurately, and work with it according to its own nature rather than their immediate impulses. The shamanic dimension. While Bombadil represents pure perception, shamanic cognition extends this capacity into operational territory. Throughout history, shamans have accessed information unavailable to ordinary consciousness. Diagnosing illness without medical training, locating water sources through non-physical means, or receiving guidance from non-human intelligences. I use non-human rather than spiritual because there are concepts like the Japanese kami that they sort of blur the boundaries between what ordinary people in Western culture would call spirits and something else. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's only one term. I would think
Right.
that there would be universal terms that
Right.
apply to the same thing if they are a shamanic culture, meaning, and the definition of shaman here, meaning the one that we've been working with on this channel.
Right. And if people haven't seen the video
The
on
Tolkien and shamanism
Tolkien and
video, I
shamanism,
should probably link that somewhere in the description or in the comments afterward. Yeah.
Key characteristics of shamanic cognition include relational and emergent. Information arises from dynamic interaction between the practitioner, context, and encountered beings or fields. It is not mechanical extraction, but a living relationship. State dependent. It requires altered states of consciousness that often can't be summoned at will. Attempts to force and replicate the state frequently collapse it. Nonlinear. Information often defies logical deduction, arriving as direct knowing, symbolic transmission, or operational instruction. Here's what's crucial. Shamanic cognition corrupts easily when approached through utilitarian or narrative frameworks. Practitioners seeking power, validation, or aesthetic experience will distort the reception channel. Only when grounded in Bombadil's pure attention can shamanic cognition remain clear and operationally useful.
That's interesting that we talk. I'm sorry about that. There was a train or something nearby. So let's go back to the key characteristics of shamanic cognition, and particularly state dependent. So I remember years ago a witch telling me that being a witch is different than being a shaman, because a witch can be in, like, if you will, in two worlds at one time, meaning the physical world, and have access to the altered dimension, like the alternate dimensions, like kind of at the same time. So, but they use it like more of an access point, where a shaman is just purely in that consciousness state. And so in ancient cultures, the shaman, like the job of the shaman was to constantly be in those altered states. And it was very difficult for them to navigate in the third dimension. So they had other people doing the third dimension things, if you will. And I say third dimension because we don't really have any other vocabulary for it. But what I mean is by this, if you will, this realm of what we call waking consciousness, but that could give people the idea that this is the real world and the other one is not the real world, and it's really the reverse, right? So
well, yeah. And actually, just a quick chime in on the waking world versus the dreaming world. If you look at, like, specifically the Native American shamans, they do not differentiate your waking world, what we call the waking world, from the dreaming world. They're one and the same to them. So, right. It's more of a Western thinking that tends to categorize and try to compartmentalize reality. To them, everything was reality. So,
and that's the case with me personally too. Everything interpenetrates everything else. So,
yeah, and actually, I think as you practice, it just blends that way. Like after a while, like you can't really, once you open those doors, I think it's very difficult to close them back and pretend that it doesn't happen anymore. You just know things, and then you can't unring a bell per se.
It's almost like that line by from Tom Hanks's character in Cloud Atlas. Nay, the dead never stay dead. Once you open up your ears, they never stop a yibbering.
And that is why I have been, because you guys don't know this, but my guides have been talking about me participating in mediumship. And in the past, when I would do things like of the sort, I would end up passing out. Like, so if a disincarnate human spirit, like that hasn't crossed over properly, would get near me, because of the relationship of where the energy just starts siphoning, like they can't help it, but the energy starts leaving, I would pass out. Okay. I then created a different way for them to figure out, because most of them just need to cross over, right? And it's like the stories don't matter, like everything just needs to just go through the wash, and like that includes you going to the other side properly so that you can do the things that you need to do, and instead of remaining in that liminal in between. Okay. But my guides have been talking to me about mediumship right now, and they have been for about 6 months, and I have not wanted to open that door because of that reason. So My idea, because I lean more, I guess, witch than shaman, I want to establish, if you will, some kind of office hours.
Mhm.
You know, sorry, office is closed, like you can't bother me, because I don't know how to navigate. Like I would not be able to be a shaman full time. It would be very, very difficult unless people were making sure that I was eating and clothed properly and all of the things, right? Like seriously, this is what happened in other societies. The shaman's full-time job was to be in the alternate consciousnesses and know everything in those places and didn't have to navigate really the this world. Okay, so it's just something I wanted to talk about here, and this was a good point to do that. And yeah, thank you for adding that as well, Dikendre. Let me go ahead and go back to the different standard of truth, and we can keep going.
Okay. Did you want to see if we have any questions or anything, or you
We
want to go
didn't.
all the?
I've already
Okay.
looked.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
A different standard of truth. Modern culture insists that valid knowledge must be replicable, producible on demand under controlled conditions. This standard works well for studying physical systems governed by consistent material laws. We're talking about science here.
Yeah.
But applying it to shamanic cognition is like demanding that friendship be reproducible in a laboratory between randomly assigned strangers. The very conditions required for replicability negate the relational substrate that makes the phenomenon possible. In other words, to boil that down in a more simpler term, people can be friends, but you can't put two people in a room and see if to test whether friendship will develop. It may or it may not, but most likely if they're strangers, there won't be anything at first. So they have to go through a relational building
Right.
first.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it has to be organic, I
Yeah.
think. Sure.
Let's see.
Absolutely.
God,
Here we go.
Okay. Instead, we use alternative validation approaches. Statistical pattern recognition. Individual sessions may not be replicable, but overall data can be analyzed for non-random patterns. Consistent correlations beyond chance expectations indicate authentic reception. Now, I have that because I'm an amateur mathematician. I can tell if the distribution in question, whether it's you know what may seem chance to other people like clouds or bird calls or whatever, I can tell if that's randomized or if there's a standard deviation or so from the mean, then something that's a signal.
Yeah,
Something is
you
there. Yeah.
definitely have a natural pattern recognition sense, if you will.
Right.
And I'm wondering if that is relatable to mathematics, by the way, because I think that pattern recognition is something that makes somebody really good at mathematics as well.
Right.
I would also say that I've noticed the same thing, by the way, in music, because and with music you can like hear it. You can hear the discordant or the harmony. Like you can, it feels good in your body or it doesn't, like it's so like you can just pin it and go, oh, that's a wrong note. It's
Right.
it's very interesting. So statistical pattern recognition. Okay, we're on operational efficiency, efficacy. Sorry.
Efficacy.
Yeah.
Operational efficacy. Does it work in practice? We systematically track outcomes when following received guidance. Success rates beyond baseline expectations confirm validity. Cross-section consistency. When symbols, themes, or instructions reoccur across different practitioners and sessions without intentional coordination, it suggests an underlying structural reality rather than a random drift.
Is that what personal gnosis versus universal gnosis might?
Yeah. In this, it would be like just random drift would be like unverified personal gnosis. It may or may not be true, but since we don't have any the sample size is too small, so we don't know if they're
Right.
receiving real information or if they aren't. But if in a group of 10, even as small as 3 to 4 people get the same content, that there's something behind it. That's
There's
a
something
signal.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you like do that as a wide scale, like hundreds of people get the same thing, there's definitely something going
Right.
on. Yeah. So, and then those things that are like thousands of years old, those are like hundreds of experiences. And even if we don't know them all, because maybe historically, they're not, like only so many of those experiences are coming to us in awareness, like of our own, because many things get destroyed, and
Right.
a lot
Yeah,
of things were
exactly.
not even written down,
Mhm.
for us. So, yeah.
And then the last of the validation approaches, external confirmation. When received information aligns with historical, cultural, or physical data unknown to the practitioner, it strengthens confidence in the reality of the contact. Self-assessment. Do you have the Bombadil mind? Before continuing, honestly assess your relationship to knowledge and unusual experiences. Do you want me to go through all of this? Because it's basically this
And we
is the
can
last.
maybe even talk to some of the people in the audience about this. So
Right.
we can do question number 1. When you encounter something mysterious or unexplained, what is your first impulse? So I'll go ahead and read out the things aloud for people that
Okay.
can't see the screen. So choice number A would be figure out how to use it. Choice B would be decide what it means about you or your beliefs. C, transform it into something creative or beautiful. And D, simply observe and understand what it is. Okay, so let's go see what we have in the comments. So, Sten has like quite a few comments here. So we'll go ahead and we'll read his, because
Sure.
this probably was happening while we were reading some of the other things.
Sure.
He says, I'd add to the point, there are non-shamanic mindsets which don't subordinate what they encounter to their own purposes. And let me see if he continues to explain that. Like, what species make up this forest that need our care and protection? The natural conservationist. Okay, I see what he's talking about. So some people will look at the science and everything and figure out what it means, but at the level of that they want to give back, they want to, conserve. And so I would say that is also a great application, but actually part of that actually goes towards understanding the nature of what it is, because I think that anybody
Exactly.
that wishes to conserve something should really understand like what the system is without like I guess that intersection of like how we can use it and everything. On the note of what Sten is saying though, you know what, we are part of nature. There is this idea that humans are separate from nature, and we should leave everything alone, and well, that's just not how it works. So I see where Sten is like trying to figure out how much, if you will, what is our role, like, part of it is what is that understanding of that thing, but also what is our role anyway, like, meaning like not in a selfish way, but like just having an understanding of how everything can live in harmony. I think that is a really good point. And and I didn't highlight the next part. So I don't know that we need to jump immediately to a shamanic mindset to enter a mindset that doesn't subordinate nature to the consumerist use that humans can get out of it. Anthropocentrism. Okay, I didn't know that there was a word for that, but okay.
But that isn't exactly what I meant. I meant if you're interested in getting contact from non-human beings, then you have to enter a different cognitive mode. That's my point. Yes, you can understand things just to know something about them, and without the intent of transforming it into something else. But that isn't exactly what the thrust of the article is.
And I would also add on that it is a good example. The only problem, though, in a sense, is that even the nature conservationists, they're not approaching the forest as the forest simply being there. Even a conservationist is fitting it into their own narrative of, what do I need to take care of? What do I need to treat? They're categorizing it for their own purpose. What the article's more touching on is not looking at, like, approaching the ocean and standing on the shore and just looking at it for the ocean. What is it as it is? Not what role do I have in it? Not how does it fit into my narrative? It's looking at something purely as it is without needing to do anything to it. What is this thing without me having to be like, are there fish in it that I can catch? Can it serve as a food source? No, it's looking at something and just going, wow, it is what it is. Nothing more.
And you could even sail on the ocean and look at the ocean for what it is. In fact, you might even know more about it because of the vastness of that. And the ocean certainly has its own ecosystem that is much more complex than our land systems.
So what we're more touching on is
So we're talking about Bombadil's mind. So what would Bombadil do, right? Like, meaning, if we're going to go there, right? What would Bombadil do? He would back away and just understand what it is. Like, he wouldn't be like trying to resource manage, or he wouldn't be even in a good intention. He wouldn't be doing that.
Trying to classify it. He would
and wouldn't be trying to classify it, and wouldn't be meaning. So and maybe and Sten, there is I see where you're crossed over, like, meaning like that you have really, there is a really heartfelt intention about it,
right?
But I think what we're doing is we're talking about the difference between a conservation scientist, which does, that does have a noble intention, okay, so that it's not just selfish. So maybe we should have added that into this paper, that there is resource management that is not selfish.
Well,
but then again, I guess who oversees that, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But Bombadil himself would be like, nope, hands off. We're not going to classify it. We're not going to resource it. We're not going to do anything with it. We're going to observe and simply just observe. I think that's what we're talking about here.
I was just going to state that observer would even be better than even just shamanic, which it's interesting because Nimue hit it right as I was about to say it. I was like, exactly.
Yeah, she says, and I'll read it for people that are not able to read the screen. Nimue says, this is neat and allowing me new perspectives on how I navigate. In my most natural state, I prefer to be the observer, eyewitness. That is absolutely the thing.
Real quick,
But I try hard to move into other boxes, engineer, artist, etc., because that's how society tends to work. And that is what is, quote, useful, unquote. This reality validates how I prefer to approach everything. That is exactly, that is so perfect, because that is true. Our reality, meaning, and really it's our culture, it tells us we have to use everything. Whether we use the resources, or whether we use things to validate ourselves, or whether we use it to create something beautiful, it's still using something. And I think that's where, and by the way, even Sten's point, which is a good point, but there's still an intervention aspect to it, even with noble intention. And I think that what we're trying to talk about today is the difference between the Bombadil approach, which is back up, like just be the observer only.
Well, an observer is perfect. It actually reminds
Yeah.
me the mindset that we're looking for, that the article is addressing, reminds me of in Portland, Oregon. I had a class when I was doing environmental engineering, which was a degree I was going for. And one of the projects that one of our teachers had us do, and it was at first it was really hard to get myself out of the mindset, but what we were to do was take 20 minutes of our class, and we were to find a secluded place where people weren't going to be passing by, so it wasn't going to we weren't going to have interruptions. And once we found a spot, we were to sit and we were to simply observe what happened around us after 5 minutes, because we're always interrupting nature. So it was sit down and what occurs in 5 minutes, what occurs in 10, what occurs in 15. And it was, the whole mindset is about basically putting yourself into an environment simply to observe that environment. We're not trying to be like, there were 35 bees that landed. It was, oh no, at 5 minutes, bees and dragonflies showed up. Like when they weren't. And so the whole thing is to put yourself as purely an observer. There was no real use for the information. We weren't going to come back and chart how many bees we saw or how many lizards, were in the area. It was simply to observe with no other purpose for the data than just to see what was there and what nature was when we got quiet and stopped in trying to force an insertion into it. We just sat and observed.
Exactly.
So a lot more of that's, an observer would even be better than the shamanic mindset, because as an observer, you aren't trying to use the data. You're not trying to look at it and be like, how many fish do I need to conserve? Is this fish overpowering that fish? You're just looking and going, oh, there are 15 fish species that I saw. No reason.
Right.
I
So,
don't need anything
and you're
to do
talking
with
about
them.
like, because you're not only witnessing the things that are of the other world, you're witnessing things in this world that you can count, that you can touch,
You're
that you
simply
can,
seeing what's
just
around you.
observer period of all the realms.
Right. You're simply seeing, whether it's what you would classify as spiritual or whatever. You're just observing the information with no purpose attached to it whatsoever. You're accepting it as it presents itself and nothing more.
Right.
Which is a hard mindset, because like Nimue said, our
Yes.
society teaches us that everything has to have a purpose. Everything, if it doesn't, then it's irrelevant. Everything is almost, from even our youth, we're taught a almost consumerist and capitalistic mindset is, how can I use everything, or how can I monetize everything? Some things simply just are.
So Sten has a reply that I highlighted below. Self-effacing observing, opening your mind to what wants to reveal itself on its own accord without prior expectation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or
Yes,
placing demands on what you are looking at.
Exactly, Sten.
That's brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Although I don't know about self-effacing. I don't know if I'd call it that. I think Nimue nailed it right there. Just allow, exist, and allow. I love it.
So yeah, no, both are exactly
observe,
what
allow.
we're talking.
Yeah, just be, rather than do, rather than what is it for, rather than, again, finding a box for it to fit in. Whether it's a useful box, or whether it's a beautiful box, or whether it's a self-meaning box.
Yeah, it's learning to just view the data as it is without an agenda. Because if you start having an agenda, then the problem with that is that you will warp the information to say what you want it to say, even if that's not what it actually says, because the mind is going, okay, I need to conform it to this narrative. And in that essence, you kind of destroy what something is, because it's like you're ignoring the parts that say, no, it's not in that category.
Well, or that you're not doing it consciously. It might be subconsciously, because maybe you're just wired that way, or like you ended up being wired or conditioned. There goes the deconditioning video.
Exactly. We're trained.
So like, because we're so trained to, you know, make things useful in one way or another, and even if it's a noble purpose, it's really hard to just allow things to be and then just hands off, just witness and continue to watch, continue to observe, and continue to just allow things without intervention, without any kind of,
right,
like, in a way, interaction, even just as an observer. So that's very interesting. Let's continue this test, okay?
Yes.
And if you guys have any responses, you can put it over in the comments. I'll switch back to each one. So we are in question number 2 right now. When you have an unusual experience, synchronicity, a vivid dream, intuitive insight, what do you typically do? Answer A is look for practical applications. B is interpret it through your own personal worldview. C, share it as an interesting story. D, record it objectively and sit with it. Okay. So I think that this is kind of a repeat. Okay, I am just listening, and that is Vera Faith. Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's and by the way, we're not looking for right and wrong responses. Myself, I'm just going to tell you, I'm kind of a blend of these things. Not so much a resource person, but I definitely have, because of my job as an astrologer, I tend to like go into the storytelling viewpoint, but not just from my viewpoint. I go through the archetypes that are present in astrology and actually help people find their own story and their own like resonance. And you can see those things in astrology. So I have some storytelling parts, but I also need to be in a place where I observe and get out of the way as well. I'm not so much an artist per se. I appreciate art, but I would definitely like say that I straddle the line between storyteller and observer. I straddle that. So there's no right or wrong answer. And even if you are a resource person, if you do it, like for instance with Sten, like a really noble cause, I mean, that's just something to know about yourself. You know, can you just sit with the data, or, you know, is it straddled with a figuring out a way to, you know, like assist and make things better? I think that there is something really good about that. As long as you are in a reflective, observing place just as often, if not more often, than you are in that space where, you know, like you're trying to fix and all of those types of things, because I think that we could skip over some things if we're not like still and observing, you know, first, and for a longer time, than trying to fix something, because we can be overactive with that. I think like our desire to, you know, like we could overreact, like, you know, and overcorrect and over all of those types of things if we're not careful in the balance of things here. So it's just something that I wanted to mention. Nimue says, I sit with it and trust whatever comes up, even if nothing else comes up.
Exactly.
And let that be. You'll feel it in your gut if you're supposed to know more. I agree with that. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it'll show up. And sometimes, you know, spirit does this with me a lot of times. You know, it'll give me little pieces to the puzzle, and it'll be like, I know what order the puzzle is, and I'm going to give these to you in order, and you're not going to get them any faster, any slower, any whatever. I'm just going to drop this little bomb on you, and you're going to just be like good with it for what it is, right? So, so sometimes I'll get like a message, and I'll be like, okay, that's interesting, and I'll just kind of file it away, like in the back of my mind or something. And then another piece will come, and it'll still be confusing, but I'll be like, okay, file it away. And then like another piece comes, and then like I start to find some relational things between the pieces, and these can be years apart, just letting you know. I've had that absolutely happen. I might also, Nimue says, haha, yes, spirit can be so sassy. You are not kidding. And spirit will not like be manipulated about what to know and what not to know. I'll give you another example. Because I'm a professional intuitive reader for, you know, a living, consultations, etc. There are times when I tell the person, like, in other words, what I'm getting in, I'm telling that person like what is coming in, what they need to know, and then the reading will be over and they go on with their lives. Okay, and then my guides will download something huge, okay, like afterward, that is like, I missed it entirely, okay. And I used to think, oh no, that didn't come soon enough, like I need to tell that person or what have you. Well, I learned the hard way that that's not what that means. I learned that sometimes it's for my knowledge only about something that I see. And that it was given to me after the fact because it's not for the person to necessarily see, because they have a journey that they're on, and it might not be something that they've crossed yet, and that they need to learn themselves without my exact assistance. They told me what they wanted me to tell that person so that they could discover it for themselves. And I don't think that there is any, in a sense, a larger crime than blowing it for the person that's learning something by just like shortcutting it and not allowing them their process. Because if they do that, then they have to, like, they may have to do that whole soul contract again and try to figure out a different way to do that. And so I have learned to be quiet and just be okay with knowing things that I'm supposed to know, and realizing some people need to know those things and some people don't. Okay. And it's, my spirit guides have been very good about not revealing to me the things that are deeper, that are beyond the understanding of the person that I may be working with, that is supposed to unfold their own journey. So I just wanted to like also let you guys know about that, because wisdom right there. I know, right? Know when to shut up. Okay, and on that note, let's keep going with the test, because I'm guessing that people are not typing in the response, and so that's fine. Okay, let's go ahead and go to question number 3. Dave, did you want to read the question number 3 this time?
Sure. Okay.
Okay, and Dekindre, do you want to read question number 4?
Sure.
Just trying to break it up a little bit.
How comfortable are you with ambiguous or partial information? A, I need to quickly resolve ambiguity into actionable knowledge. B, I need to fit it into my existing framework of meaning. C, I prefer to elaborate it into something complete or beautiful. Or D, I can hold uncertainty and let understanding emerge naturally.
Exactly. We were just talking about this. I have learned number 4. I have learned number 4. I would have said I need to fit it into the existing framework of the client rather than myself.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Well, that's a
because I
somewhat
want
different
to
thing.
be
Yeah.
so of service, but sometimes spirit isn't like that. Is not how it works. Spirit gives you the steps you need when you need them, and trust is absolutely necessary. And so if you cannot hold space for allowing things to emerge naturally, you have a trust issue. And impatience is a trust issue. And when you don't trust spirit, by the way, spirit will go, oh, you don't trust me. Okay, the knowledge is now like, I'm not going to trust you with it because you don't trust me. So, you know, we're just not going to have that download anymore. So you could actually really shoot yourself in the foot if you are not in a patient way for ambiguous or partial information, meaning that you can't just let that be and then just let everything unfold naturally. Yeah. Let me see what anybody is saying over in the comments here. Okay, nothing. Okay.
So, number 4.
Okay,
is
I'll go ahead and start scrolling here. Sorry.
what draws you to mythic or esoteric subjects? A, they might give me capabilities or advantages. B, they help me understand my place in the cosmic story. C, they're aesthetically fascinating and creatively inspiring. D, they represent aspects of reality worth understanding for their own sake.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I guess that for me, the crossover is B and D still. And I'm learning how to be more D than B,
And then
if that makes sense.
right. And then I conclude this section with, if you answered mostly D, you may have natural Bombadil cognition. If you answered mostly A, B, or C, you might still develop this capacity, but it will require conscious cultivation. Now I'll go to the next section. What we're looking for. Wavewater's lore seeks cognitive allies and operational collaborators for mythic engineering work. We're not looking for lifestyle mimics who adopt external signifiers, pipes, elf ears, medieval aesthetics, as substitutes for direct mythic contact.
Are you talking about like cosplayers or like,
Yeah,
is that what
well,
you mean
yeah,
by that?
yeah, well, and even, you know, I understand some people watching this channel might still, you know, have
Like
a
role playing game type
well, and
things,
even
or
well, some people in this channel might still have a liking for or an
yeah.
allegiance to Kim Burrell, but she put on the elf ears and the, you know, the whole thing, you know, so that may be fine for her, but that's not what I'm looking for, you know.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Meaning,
Yeah.
and I do, and on the note of Kim Burrell, I do remember her, you know, very resonant with the material. Like she definitely did, you know, read the material. She really wanted to understand it. She had her own filters, though. In other words, like, you know, I guess some of the other things that have come to her, and this is all okay, like meaning for her own understanding. Like she had
Right.
different alignments, not just Tolkien, that she was working with. And so my guess is that so I was going to ask about this part, Dave, because I realized that there are mythologies, meaning, you know, Greek mythologies, there's Norse mythologies, there's, you know, Vedic mythologies. What is the difference between people that have studied other mythologies versus someone that lets it bleed into like the Tolkien mythology? Like in other words, like where is the line between like the comparative like aspect of knowing all of those other mythologies?
Well, that's the line is that if you have shamanic cognition, as I'm defining it here, everything interpenetrates everything else. In other words, it's not an academic subject; it's a lifestyle. So, but it's not a lifestyle mimetic. It's a It's an emergent property of your cognitive mode. So
okay, but they would still have to know, I guess, on some level, even if there's commonality between, like, say, different mythology bodies, they'd need to know how to specify that, right? Like, in other words, like, because what we're doing is we're looking at Tolkien as mythology, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I would say that the line, as someone who's spent 25 plus years studying the occult, I've studied so many different systems that it's, you know, insane. But the difference is that it's learning to compartmentalize, again, going back to the sort of the deconditioning and all of that. It's learning to compartmentalize. Yes, I've studied Druidry and I've studied the Norse pantheon and I've studied the others. What, like Dave said, being an occultist it's not my religion, it's not my spirituality. I mean, it is in a sense, but it's also my life. It is my day in, day out, how I am. And it's learning that those don't need to, what we see too often is that people want to, okay, I studied the Greek pantheon. Well, now how does that attach to the Valar? Like they have to be.
Oh,
they have
they're
to be
looking for those piece to piece, like, in other words, literal comparison.
Right.
Versus,
they're looking for
like just allowing
Zeus.
the body of it to just be its own thing. I see this all the time in astrology. They try to mix Vedic astrology with Western astrology, like, meaning use the same techniques that are, you know, without care, and then they just apply it to Western astrology, and then it's like a mishmash, and then it doesn't work.
So the biggest difference is understanding.
So it's discretion about the interrelations between things, knowing where things originate from versus, you know, I guess just like mixing the whole soup together and just not caring. Is that the difference?
Well, kind of, yeah. It's understanding each as their own system. And what too often people want to do, I see it in, as oddly as you would expect, I see it in something like some of the Gothic groups that I'm on in Facebook, where these people are like, oh, I've always been into goth lifestyle or Gothic things my whole life, but I don't dress up in the all black trench coats and I don't put on all the makeup and the jewelry and all of this that often. So I'm not sure if I'm still Gothic. And it's like, they have to, society's gotten to where for someone to consider themselves Elven, they, like Dave said, they have to put on the pointy aesthetic ears and they need to be wearing flowy dresses. They need to be wearing flowy dresses or robes for the guys 24/7, or they're not an elf. And it's
or they're not okay. Like, I see what you're saying. So
you can be as much
overemphasis on the surface aesthetic and not the deeper meaning of the substance of it.
Right. Because as I try to comment in those groups, you can be goth and wear tie-dye and, you know, hippie neon colors.
Although I don't know very many goths that do that, but they definitely have like a dialed down, if you will, dress code, you know, that you can still tell that they're goth, but like they're not like fully like, you know, oh my God, like black makeup every day and whatever.
So that's my point is where it gets, it's the over sensationalist. And I loved her for who she was in a sense, but Kimberell had to always wear be the most extravagant.
So there was the regalia.
I mean,
exactly. Regalia is a good word.
She even went on to BBC.
Which, by the way, is okay to a degree, but it shouldn't be your first emphasis. It should definitely be like, I guess, like a secondary or a, you know, an afterthought. Of the actual alignment that you are internally.
I mean, to the point that like Kimberell went on to the Piers Morgan show with pointy ears.
Yeah. that
And
probably
it's like,
wasn't the best idea on the whole world. I mean,
right.
like just to even agree to be on that jackass's show
But
was probably
I mean,
not
but
even a
even
good idea.
But it goes
Okay.
even further. There's been so many
Yeah.
reality shows, and I always point this out, where they never find the pagan CEO who wears a 3-piece business suit, doesn't wear rings, doesn't have 900 piercings. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but a lot of these reality TV shows, when they're looking for a pagan, they're not looking for the CEO who is a successful businessman. They always go out and they find the one woman.
They're looking for drama. They're looking for chaos,
so
because that's what sells on their channel. Yeah.
So they go out and they find the one woman that is barefoot all the time, dancing around in dresses, hugging trees, has 4 kids who are homeschooled, and it's like, that is not. They go for the most sensational, over the top.
Exactly. Because the sensation is what is selling on their channel. And then they cut it down and make fun of it. And
right. And that's what Dave's talking about. We're not looking for the people that have to that have to be like, I never leave the house without my elf ears, and dressing like I'm a 13th century lord, because this is how the elves would look.
Yeah. Well, like in my personal case, I'm a punk in the 1980s sense, but I don't dye my hair green and put Elmer's glue in it to make it a nice mohawk. Yeah,
right. All this stuff. So I see that. Yeah, punk / metal. I get it. I'm
looking
one of those,
for the over sensationalist. We're not looking for the over sensationalist. We're looking, for the individual that exactly, they simply are something. They don't have to have an outward display. No one's going to look at it and be like, oh my God.
I mean, they can, but the primary piece is that it needs to be internal, not external.
Yeah.
Like, and if it is external, whatever. Well, but it's more of an internal grounding in the energy rather than being sensational. Yeah.
Well, and the sensational, not that it's a bad thing, but 99.99% of the time, the ones that are super sensational fall right into the second.
Well, they're not grounded. That's why, because they don't have any substance.
Yeah, they fall right into the second bulletin point, which is a validation.
Okay, which, by the way, the validation seekers. Okay,
so need approval or social
what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the next 3 points, and then there's been some comments since then. So I highlighted them briefly so that I would know, hey, we saw this. We'll discuss it in a moment. So, okay, go ahead and discuss the next 3 bullet points here on the cognitive allies and operational collaborators for mythical engineering work. Looking for lifestyle mimics. Okay.
Yeah. Validation seekers who need approval or social status for their experiences. Now, that can apply to anything, but in the Tolkien realm, it's like, yo, I'm a Tolkien linguist. I'm hot shit. Bow before me.
Or how about one of the groups that shall remain nameless, where their memories were the only criteria to be in that group, and like if that person wasn't in that person's memories, then they were So very interesting. And if everybody didn't bow to the memories of that person, like it was a problem as well.
And then the next one is utilitarian collectors who want mythic knowledge as a tool for personal power. In other words, people who collect,
magical, like those people that want to study the occult to dominate the world or whatever.
And they'll collect like variations on the banishing ritual of the pentagram or whatever. In Tolkien terms, they may like buy very rare first editions of the Silmarillion or whatever, because not necessarily.
I mean, because I have collections of things, but like they're not for me to like whoa, I'm bragging about them, you know,
Right,
like
right.
I'm so OG, like whatever.
Well, that's the big difference. If you collect it for your own because you like
Yeah,
it, that's different.
because it actually is very meaningful at a very deep level, not because
But
I want to impress people.
but
Yeah.
if you're using it as as a tool to show how cool you are, then
Yeah.
then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, doing it wrong, definitely. Narrative performers who turn every experience into content for their personal story. Oh, yeah, okay. So, again, what I mean, it's the same kind of person that we're talking about. Is
Right.
basically anybody that is sensationalist, really,
Right.
Well, and
Right.
superficial
in
would be another
and
thing.
superficial and
All of these
trendy
are very surface,
and
superficial
trendy and
things.
cool.
They rarely turn it inward.
Yeah.
It's usually just an external,
Or it might even be a
covering.
passing fancy rather than a grounded, like centered, like you're all, you know, like if you're a
Well,
person that's into mythology, you're gonna probably want to be into
and
mythology your whole life.
and the last one, this happens in tech a lot too. I don't know if anybody listening to our video
Hmm.
here has ever had any exposure to the Linux community. I wrote a whole other paper on that, but
Oh,
they are a narrative performers to the nth degree. I mean, it's like there's
wow.
an
Who would
actual
have thought?
expression. There's an actual expression. I used Arch Linux, by the way. That means that you can't be any cooler than that. I use Arch, by the way, yo.
Wow. So yeah, and then this, like, I guess it applies to every field that there's always people who want. I can tell you that that happens even with astrologers, which is supposed to be a spiritual, you know, kind of thing, but there is always these I'm the best astrologer type people, and my readings are, you know, like, you know, and they'll read, like, maybe they'll read things in the collective world that are, you know, like I predicted, you know, Trump would win the presidency or whatever, you know, like all
Hmm.
of those kinds of
Right.
things. Therefore, I'm the best astrologer is how that would translate, like meaning hire
Exactly.
me.
That's a
I will
narrative
know how
performer.
everything
Yeah.
is going to be. So I don't do predictive work. I mean, at least like that. And what I mean by that is, I don't do a lot of mundane work because partly because like I'm really working at like wanting to not be in this vibration of the third dimension. Okay. Like definitely looking at other dimensional like shifts for ascension and things like that. So I don't like to be mired down in the dirt of what is happening in this dimension right now. And in fact, I really want to distance myself from all of that. So, you know, am I worse of an astrologer because I refuse to participate in the duality stuff of like, who's going to win the presidency? I've had people ask me that. Who's going to win the presidency? It's like, not my job. I mean, there are people out there that that's what they care about. And then they need that kind of astrologer because they're living in the third dimension and they want to see the duality of everything. That's not my client. Okay. So it even happens in these spiritual type fields of like, I'm the best, this, that, and the other. And it's
Hmm.
utterly ridiculous. Okay. So I know what you mean by that.
Did you
Okay.
want to look at comments if there are any before we go
No,
to the
but
next
I'm going to
section?
scroll here to what we are looking for people who,
Okay.
but then
Okay.
I'm going to switch back to the comments because we've had quite a few that came in.
Okay.
So that,
Do you want to read who we are looking for?
in a moment.
Okay.
But first, let me go ahead and talk about like some of the people
Okay.
that have made comments since we were talking. So Nimue says, I have learned to be comfortable with not knowing the whole picture, trusting that I'll know what I need to know. Forcing
Exactly.
things distorts flow. Oh my gosh. Quote.
Precisely. Yeah.
Quote. Okay, that has been a hard lesson. Right. Yes. Okay. Nimue also says, B transforming into D on that last one, D on the rest. It was a great little quiz provided useful self-insight. Wow, so we both have a B and D kind of resonance.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
And
Thank you
both
for
of
saying
us
that.
are working on D more than B, like meaning that we're trying to balance that, just being observant, and then maybe allowing the story to unfold. But we're working at the allowing piece rather than the, the initiative piece, which I think is wonderful. Sten says, to resume, those are questions to see whether the Bombadil mindset, pure attention mindset, is something you're naturally inclined to, and if not, it's probably something you can learn or practice. That is correct.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the point.
That is
Yeah.
correct.
That's why
okay.
I made it.
And then he continues, if you really want to, I'm reminded of the exercises I do to quiet or still my mind. It's kind of like having a dog, the mind, that tends to jump immediately at anything that moves in the grass. Correct. I call that monkey mind, but you can call it dog mind. I would say that both of those would probably resonate. Monkey mind is to me like that jumpy thing that like, and you can rein it in and say, that's nice, come back to center. Okay. Like, you don't want to necessarily make it quiet. You want it to like get its whatever it is out of it. Okay. But then you say, not important, come back to center. And then that's how I do my monkey mind, because I have a monkey mind from hell. I'm a Gemini rising. So I definitely do that. I bounce around, and anybody that knows me will know that I'm like, like total ADD kind of, stuff. However, I definitely do try to say, okay, enough of that, and get back to, what we're doing. And, it really helps having other people around, because that can actually help me to stay focused on what we're doing here. So Nimue says, needing equivalence as shortcuts to understanding warps the true nature and the lessons of each mythology.
Exactly.
Let me read that again. Needing equivalence as shortcut to understanding warps the, I see, warps meaning the verb. Okay, gotcha. I was looking at warps as a noun, and that didn't work in the sentence. Okay, so okay, to need equivalence or shortcuts to understanding, it totally messes up or warps the true nature and lessons of each mythology. That is correct.
Yeah, because you're not experiencing the mythology as it is. You're experiencing it in relation to something else.
In relation to something that you already had, which I guess therefore goes back to the deconditioning video. Right. So we're going to link the deconditioning video, and we're going to link the Tolkien and shamanism video next. Is that correct? Am I on track with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Sten continues, you're re-educating the dog to not jump at things immediately, but to sit still and just watch, and takes practice. Phew. Yes, that's exactly correct. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely. Nimue says, many interpret wrapping the package as adjusting the inner contents. Oh my goodness.
She is very correct.
Yeah, that's a great quote.
Mind. It is the best.
That's a great quote.
It is the best mind. I swear, I love it. Playing dress up isn't the same thing as deep understanding. They can both exist, but one does not equal the other. Oh my goodness, isn't that the case?
Exactly. Wow. And that's why I've said why I was pointing out in the Gothic community, people are like, well, if I don't have my face painted white, I'm not wearing a ton of black makeup,
and my black
I don't
liner.
have all jewelry. Yeah. I'm not wearing my boots. I'm not Gothic. And I'm like, you could be wearing a burlap sack and be Gothic, because being Gothic is a lifestyle. Not
absolutely. And by the way, I went to a goth club recently with my henna ends and somebody came up to me and was like, oh my God, like, what are you, like, and I was like, there and stuff. and they were all talking about how they had to dye their roots black and all of the stuff, you know, because like many of them didn't even have like naturally black hair, right?
Right. But they've assumed that Gothic means all black. And it's like, it doesn't.
And for me, you know, like they were looking at me and then I'm like, so what could be more goth than gray hair, actually? I mean,
well, and to get it a little to direct it a little bit back to the Tolkien realm, you know, the whole elf ears thing. We did a whole separate video on that too.
We did it. Okay, elf ears. So now we got 3 videos that we gotta, like hook up.
But to me, that's as dumb as, you know, trying to impress the ladies by putting on a big old cod piece. Look, yo, it's 10 inches long.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
It's understanding, like Nimue said, the whole package, you know, adjusting the inner contents. If the inner contents are already in order, then the outer wrappings do not matter.
They don't matter. They can
aren't.
be there, but they don't matter because it's the inner part that's really actually resonant. That's
and
so
that's
great.
What we're looking for.
I'm going to take notes. Okay, Tolkien and shamanism.
We're not looking for the people that need to have, you know, like Dave wrote, the elf ears and the pipes and dress like they're in the medieval period. It's like, yeah. No,
okay. I will be adding these to the description afterward, and also in the comments below, so that if anybody wants to check those out, if they haven't already checked them out, and if they're watching today. So, very good. So Nimue also says, I need to say a huge thank you for this video. I thought for so long that I was doing it wrong, and this video right here is showing me I was on the right path all along. That's wonderful. Yay!
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
You might be a match for our path and actually, Nimue, I've just gotta mention this to you. I think you have not only the best observations that some people have like brought forth here, but you express it in a way that is so concise and so like the meaning really carries as well.
Absolutely.
And I just want to tell you that. Okay. And Sten says, I'm also grateful for this video because it gives more substance to something that I have already felt drawn to and wanted to practice more. That's fantastic. That is awesome. I think that, and I think that a lot of us could practice that too, Sten. I'm telling you, me. Okay, like seriously, I get it. I really get it. So, I am often involved in more of the storytelling aspect because of my job. So I do have to remember to be still and to like allow to be what is. It really is like that. Oh, Nimue says that means a lot. Thank you. Absolutely. So fun. We're going to probably end up talking later about lots of things, but some of which, and I want to share it with the audience right now, Nimue has been our provider for meme art for the holidays recently, and you guys may have noticed a shift in the art style.
Oh, it's
that
fantastic.
Is just so like up-leveled, right? How do you guys like the earmo so far? Oh, wasn't that just amazing?
Yeah, that was great.
That was so amazing. So we are looking forward to this excellent relationship that we have with art, because it is so much better than my throwing a couple of stock photos together with a font. I mean, really, that's really what all I was doing. I did it okay. I mean, I look back at it now and I'm like, okay, it was what it was, and it didn't suck, but it wasn't like all that either. I really love our brand up level. And our new YouTube banner. I mean, my goodness, right?
None of we three are graphic artists, so you did the best you could. Did better than I could, so there you are.
None of us are graphic artists, and I'm not even like other than crocheting and stuff. I'm not real that, and that's more crafty than it is you know, like visual art style and what have you.
No, when it comes to drawing, I always joke that when it comes to art, I always joke that I flunked kindergarten because I couldn't scribble.
Okay. I understand. That totally makes sense.
Art is not my forte.
Says, I love Nimwe's art. Yay. And then Nimue says, thank you so much for all the love. Awesome. Okay, we're going to go back to reading the parts of what we're looking for.
Yeah, well, who we are looking for. We're looking for people
who we are looking for. Yay!
We are looking for people who can perceive without grasping, encounter otherworldly information without immediately needing to use, interpret, or transform it. Sustain ambiguity, work with partial or symbolic data without forcing premature conclusions. Maintain operational fidelity. Receive guidance accurately and with minimal personal projection. Value knowledge for its own sake. Find satisfaction and understanding even when there's no immediate application. And finally, practice cognitive humility. Approach mythic realities as a guest rather than a conqueror. And then
I like that.
Yeah, and there's a little note at the end, because I realize some people who, since this is a public video, some people might see it. These woo people are crazier than shithouse rats. So what I did with this note is, no, the phenomena described, such as encounters with non-human intelligences or reception of otherworldly information, are open to interpretation. Some may view these as literal interactions, while others may see them as metaphoric expressions of inner processes. What matters most is not the nature of the experience itself, but the clarity, consistency, and operational utility of the insights gained.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. And those things would resonate, meaning those meanings would translate universally, I believe.
Right.
To anybody who is conscious of that experience, you know, and maybe even people that are not conscious of the experience, but then in retrospect end up being conscious of an experience that they only knew subconsciously.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of application with that. So we appreciate that. So here's the practice forward. Here's the good part, right?
Right.
Here's the good part.
The practical path forward. If you recognize yourself in this description, here's what developing Bombadil cognition looks like in actual practice. Daily exercises. Spend time observing natural phenomena without naming, categorizing, or interpreting them. Practice receiving information in dreams or meditation without immediately analyzing what it means. Like, you know, people oftentimes have dreams and they say, what does this mean? I saw a horse in my dream. What does it mean? It may mean something, or there's an also non-trivial chance that it may mean nothing, other than that maybe you like horses, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a lot of different things. It could be a personal symbol to that person.
Right.
It could be a universal, like, you know, the archetypes, because these are talked about by Carl Jung, where we dream, and there's archetypes that we tap into that are universal, but they can also be personal too. So to say, oh, the horse means this in every single situation is just not, that's just not transferable.
Right.
Because for one person that maybe doesn't have anything to do with horses, a horse could mean more of the collective, you know, universal energy of like freedom and spirit and running forward, or, and, you know, going in a direction, versus, you know, a person that does have a deep resonance for horses. It could be a specific horse, even, like, that is their, you know, messenger, or like many it might not even be a physical horse, that it might be like, or, you know, a guide that like comes as a horse. Like, there's so many different ways that can happen.
Or as even Sigmund Freud, weird as he was, said,
oh, he was definitely strange.
Said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
symbolize a penis, you know.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, for him, I think everything, you know, was about sexuality for him.
Yeah.
He was definitely very suppressed, I guess, as an individual. But, you know, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't necessarily know about Carl Jung and his work. You know, and I really do think that Carl Jung, if it was allowed back then, probably would have been an astrologer for a living.
Right.
He was definitely like tapped into the archetypes of astrology, and I think he learned a lot from astrology through that exploration, and it made it, you know, kind of mainstream for people who then could use you know, astrology in psychology. So many people like got jobs that wanted to do astrology professionally, and they decided to become counselors. They decided to become, you know, therapists, so that they could use some of this stuff. There's also other things like art therapy and other things that could cross over into those areas as well. But I just wanted to mention that.
Right.
In this century, like many people that wanted to be an astrologer, like for a living, they weren't able to do it in a traditional sense, so they had to like adjunct it with being like a psychotherapist or what have you, in order to do those things. So
anyway,
the
last of the daily exercises. When encountering unusual synchronicities, record them objectively before adding interpretation. And as a shaman, I can tell you that recording the vision right after it happens is important, because otherwise details will get lost over time. So it's important to record this as far as you can in notes or in audio recording, or
and recording
you want to
them,
use.
like meaning when a horse is riding on the plane, like you record it as a horse riding on the plane, like you'll
Right.
deal with the details
you
of
just,
that later.
You describe what you saw in your vision insofar as possible, and whether that's writing it or an audio recording or whatever that's later transcribed or whatever, it doesn't matter how you do it. It just matters to capture as many details as possible from the primary experience. And the
Excellent. Let me go switch over just to see if there's any more comments. Nope, we're good. So let's keep going.
Research approach. Study mythic traditions to understand their structure rather than adopting their aesthetics.
Aha! There we go. There's the difference.
Right. Oh,
remember when I was asking you earlier about how do we determine from a mythological standpoint, like being able to study multiple myths, but yet keep the Tolkien mythology intact?
Right.
So there's the answer right there, to understand their structure, and then the Tolkien structure, but not necessarily have to like make crossover between the two.
Right, because you
can understand them independently.
Right. Yeah. And then the next one is approach esoteric texts with genuine curiosity rather than seeking validation for your existing beliefs.
There you go.
Yeah. And the last one, distinguish between information that feels personally meaningful and information that carries objective structural data. Like I get stuff from the Salvia people that I then search on Google, and most of the time I hit something. So it's not, they give me stuff that I've never thought of before. I search it, I find something. That's an objective verification because it actually exists in the real world, and there's a website. It could be, it's about many different things. I mean, I found our house this way by that process. So,
Okay. So meaning like you're talking about like an expression in the outer world sometimes.
Right.
Versus like just in it personally meaningful, meaning like it explains something, but it's not like necessarily tangible or what have you.
That may be a difference between the Salvia people and other forms of shamanism, in that, for me anyway, they give me objective data that I can actually verify. Now, other people may talk about, I don't know, the beings from the Pleiades gave me a message for humanity. The Salvi people only give me messages for me, not messages for humanity. So
Okay, but if it is for humanity, I mean, it would probably come out on this channel, right?
well, they
Like
just
meaning
they,
because we are a wider community, even though the basis of this community is rooted in Tolkien.
well, what I mean is they give me specific information that's applicable to me. They don't
I
have
see.
messages
Like they'll show
for
you your
humanity.
house.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
we're gonna have to talk about this, Dave, because I have an idea. So just bookmark that for me. Okay.
Okay.
Meaning objective structural data. Okay.
Right.
I'm gonna put that down so that okay. Actual I guess it would be like kind of a prediction in a way, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's basically like it's
Okay.
precognition actually.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Precognition.
That's right.
Anyway,
That's
the
right.
last topic in this section is community engagement. Share observations rather than interpretations. Ask questions that deepen understanding rather than confirm existing positions. And contribute to collective knowledge gathering rather than individual status building. And
Okay.
that's the end of this section.
Okay. Well, we can read the deeper invitation as well. Did you want to read that, Dave, or because I mean it's a little longer.
I can read it. Yeah,
Okay.
I can
Okay.
read it.
Brilliant. Okay. There we go.
The deeper invitation. In Tolkien's world, Tom Bombadil remains a mystery to most characters. He fits neither the role of the wise guide nor dangerous obstacle. He simply is, present, aware, and delighted by existence itself. This presents us with a profound teaching. To see reality clearly, we must release our compulsion to immediately reshape it according to our purposes. For way of Arda's lore, this isn't philosophical speculation, but practical necessity. Our work, mapping mythic dimensions, receiving operational guidance from non-human intelligences, engineering shift in collective consciousness, requires a cognitive purity that few possess and few cultivate. We don't need more people who can talk impressively about esoteric subjects. We need people who can stand quietly in the presence of genuine mystery, receive information accurately, and work with it according to their own nature rather than their personal agenda. If you've read this far and feel a quiet recognition, if you've always been drawn to knowledge not for what it can do, but for what it is, if you can perceive without needing to possess, if your mind rests easily with unanswered questions, you may have a place in this work. This path is neither dramatic nor socially rewarding. It requires the patience of a naturalist, the precision of a scientist, and the humility of a student. But it offers something rare in our culture, the possibility of genuine contact with larger realities that mainstream consciousness either denies or reduces to entertainment. And I have a little quote here. Many will study the maps of distant lands, but few will learn the art of navigation itself. This is your invitation to become a navigator. Should I go on to the end?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Next steps.
Next steps. If this resonates with you, 1. Observe yourself for 1 week. Notice when your mind jumps to utility, narrative, or aesthetic transformation when encountering new information. Practice pure attention daily. Spend 10 minutes observing something in nature without naming, categorizing, or interpreting it. Keep a neutral log of unusual experiences, dreams, or synchronicities. Record what happened without immediately analyzing what it means. And lastly, reach out if you find yourself naturally operating in Bombadil mode and want to explore how this capacity might serve larger mythic engineering projects. The work begins with a simple question. Ask in pure attention, what is this? And the world then unfolds its hidden topologies to those who can truly listen. And so some people might not know what topology is, because it's a mathematical word. I'll give the definition here. Topology is a branch of mathematics that studies the properties of geometric objects that are preserved under continuous deformations, like stretching, twisting, and bending, but not tearing or gluing. Essentially, it is concerned with the spatial relationships and connectivity of shapes, ignoring the specific size or shape. And how this applies to like mythological structures. Tolkien's work, it shows topological transformations. Like Barad and Luthien were there from the very beginning, but in the very beginning they were both elves. But the relationship between them, it's most of its details remained, even though Baron later became a man. Luthien turned into not just an elf, but an elf Maya fusion. But now tearing or gluing, or cutting and gluing, is what Amazon's Rings of Power did. They just put all kinds of crap in there, and they didn't transform stuff. They just patched it together, and
Right. Well, do you feel
not what
that
topology is.
Tolkien, when he like some of those details that were like later transmitted to him, because we've already done a video about Tolkien and shamanism, and we're going to be doing one about Tolkien and channeling, which will be very similar, where Rings of Power isn't doing anything like that. They're literally, like you said, they're just chopping it up and doing whatever the hell they want. And
exactly.
Honestly,
yeah.
I believe that there is some, because they've done the same thing with other authors there, wherein Tolkien, I think, is just one of the best ones that was doing this, was that it had to do with definitely a person that's well aligned in nature and well aligned in individual sovereignty, okay?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And well aligned in liberty without harming others, okay?
Right.
So that we can cooperate and like the source energy would like us to be, and not like after power, after usurping everything. So there's definitely energies that Tolkien definitely I believe resonates with those things, and I do believe that Rings of Power was trying to rip that up, okay?
Right.
They may or may not have succeeded, because you know what, whether they want it to or not, eventually the people that really need to know, they're going to read Tolkien, and they're going to figure out pretty quickly, like, oh, this is a whole other level. Okay, so in a way, they're probably actually advertising Tolkien. So that's what my magic towards Rings of Power is about, is that it's like, it's a twisted but yet excellent means of advertising Tolkien. And those that are ready are going to like find the deeper material, and even if they discovered it through Rings of Power, they'll find Tolkien, and then they'll outgrow Rings of Power. They will not even like resonate with that at all if they are of the true body of Tolkien energy. So the other thing I was going to mention before we ended today, and this occurred to me while we were talking about Bombadil Mind. When he receives the ring, okay, the ring that like even Gandalf or Galadriel would bend to, that particular ring, because of the way that it is. And yet it did not affect Bombadil at all.
Exactly.
That is the essence to me of no agenda.
Exactly. It didn't mean anything to him. It was just so much fluff.
So it was powerless, because nearly everybody has agenda. Okay. Right. And even if that's a noble agenda, like meaning Gandalf, Galadriel, they definitely had noble agendas. They were just also intelligent enough to realize like that, yeah, stay away from that ring, right? But Bombadil's like, whatever, right? Like he right. Didn't matter, because he was that pure. So I think that that's kind of a cool benchmark to work toward. When we don't care about something that is intrinsically powerful, meaning to us, but yet harming to others, like, because that's what it does, right?
Right.
And it even harms the self. Like, look at Gollum. I mean, lived forever, but like, you can't tell me he was happy. Okay. Even Bilbo, like, you know, was, I mean, and Bilbo was a pretty cool guy, and obviously not
Right.
that much of an agenda, but even it affected him after a while. So to be like Bombadil, and maybe that's his purpose in the story, is to demonstrate this non-agenda. It's a very, very interesting point.
And of course at the very end I have my references there. So if people
Yeah,
interested,
the references are
will
in
see.
the, yeah, you can definitely look at all the references. They'll be in the article. It's linked below, so already. Okay. And you can even look at some of Dave's other articles. So very good. So we are going to get out of the article now, and we're going to see. Okay. Nimue says, don't cherry pick into info. I'm sorry. My eyes did not read that properly. Don't cherry pick info to validate your already established belief system. Be mindful not to discard things.
Exactly.
Just because you don't like what it's telling you. Observe all and let the pieces fall, like, and probably into place or out of place, depending on what it is.
In the sciences, that's called confirmation bias. So, you know, when you really want your test to prove that your drug works, so you know you'll
actually
make it
seem
happens.
Like yeah. Unfortunately, that, I mean, yeah, pharma. I mean, I actually think pharma in its origin is a very it's a very twisted type of thing that has actually done a spell on humanity for keeping humanity sick and the need of these, quote, substances to limp along but never find cure for a very long time. And not that I'm saying that pharma should, like, literally go away, because I do see circumstances in which pharma is a good bridge that keeps a person alive until they can get to the part that, you know, works for them chronically, what have you. But they definitely are not energetically aligned with the highest good of an individual. Okay, they're not aligned with that, and it's totally clear to me, like, so much now. It's not just a different philosophy. I literally do think that there is a twist on it that is demeaning to humanity at a larger level. But I'm not saying that it doesn't have a purpose, okay? I definitely think that it shouldn't just disappear, because I've seen too many times when pharma can save a life, particularly in acute situations. Chronic situations, which, by the way, a lot of the things in our world create those chronic situations. And then we have genetics that are trying to adapt to all of these things, and then, like, there's different things that have weakness. That's a different matter. And I think that those things need to have energetic and or vitalistic means in order to find, if you will, cure. Okay, and I will just put that in quote marks because I don't want to get in trouble. I think that, you know, and each person's, you know, journey with that is very individual, and they'll find things that they need, and they'll be guided like, as much as they can be there in their I am, okay, as much as possible. I definitely believe that each time you will get the next piece to do more healing work, and it probably is going to be gradual, because if we do, like, that total, like, boom of healing, I mean, that could kill us. Okay, like, you know, like, to expand our energy too quickly could literally short circuit a lot of things, and the short circuiting could be problematic. So, okay, we have Nimue that says, I think this might be me. I'm going to follow the next steps, some of which I already do daily. Excellent. She says, I want a bracelet WWBD, what would Bombadil do? Yes.
Well,
We like that.
I have to say, Nimue, I would be honored to have you be a part of the Mythic First Research and Development organization, because so far there's just me in it. So, you know.
Yeah, because our other friend, yeah, he's just not, and I think it's just been more of a, like, there's just hasn't been a timing thing that
Right.
it's
Mhm.
and it's fine, but I think that he has the right mindset too. Pretty cool. I agree. Create the sickness, then offer a quote cure to the sickness, which is regarded as a hero. To that. Okay, gotcha. I was trying to read that. Never mind. Yes, exactly. And by the way, not even a cure for the sickness. It's literally a disease maintenance system.
Well, no, it's even, if I can,
it's
even
even
worse
creepier than that, I'm sure. But
well, here's
yeah.
the thing: everything in our society, in it, specifically the U.S. society, but global as well. But you see
global as well.
But in the U.S.,
oh, it's particularly attacked here. I agree.
Well, it's capitalism, and here's why.
Well, it's also that we have a constitution, and they're after that. So.
Well, no, here's what I'm talking about: capitalism. Everything can be broken down to capitalism, and the reason I point that out is, my research is way out of date, so it's several years back, but Pfizer Pharmaceuticals makes $4.8 billion a year. And this was like 5, 6, maybe 8 years ago. I looked it up. But Pfizer alone makes $4.8 billion a year on cancer treatments. If you cure cancer, let's say let's just say lymphoma cancer. If you cure cancer, they lose $4.8 billion a year in revenue. And when your society is set up to make money and everything needs to be profitable, it is more beneficial to your stockholders and your shareholders to make a better treatment or a new treatment for the symptoms rather than going after the source. But we don't do it people always point to the pharmaceutical, but you don't realize that our prison systems, all of our prisons are private for-profit businesses.
Every structure, education, prison,
in our prison systems,
food, everything.
In our prison systems, you need an 80% capacity, at least 80% capacity for a prison to be profitable. If you have less than 80% capacity, then you're losing money. So, as a result, we create our system so that when a person gets out, they cannot find a job, because we made the laws so that if you have a felony or a criminal record, it's really difficult, if not almost impossible, for that individual to get a job and contribute to society. Even if they went to college while in prison, most jobs won't hire them. So they get out, and what do? They need to live. So well, it's not that they can't help it, it's they have no choice. They need to have rent, they need to buy food, so they go back to crime, which guarantees that they will get arrested again and go back into the system. And we will do this over and over and over. If we were truly concerned about the non-capitalistic approach, we would do what Norway did, which Norway federalized all of their prisons. The government took over all of the prisons, and they were no longer for profit. They were simply for incarcerating those who couldn't fit into society. But they actually took a rehabilitation approach, which is they started doing re-education, giving degrees, whatever. They changed their national laws so that when you got out of a facility, you couldn't be discriminated against, and there were jobs for you. And as a result, Norway has one of the lowest incarceration rates in the world. They actually had to start closing prisons because what they discovered was hey, wait a minute, we've done so well at rehabilitating our individuals that we only need a few prisons around for the ones that are purely psychotic and can't be rehabilitated.
Right.
So our problem in a lot of our world today is not just pharmaceutical, it's consumer, it's capitalistic. Everything
Well, it's
has
not
to make
just
money.
capitalism, because you could make money with capitalism by selling a cure to cancer too, and you could make money by being in
But
rehabilitation rather than in prison business.
yes
So
and no.
that's not it. Okay, there is other means going
but
on.
the problem
Okay?
is, here's the thing. I've pointed this out to, yes, you could make money by selling a cure. However, at the end of the day,
And there's about 60 cures, by the way, right now.
But the problem
just
with
letting you know.
your mentality, though, Lisa, is yes, you could make money, but not as much and not long term. Because here's the problem: if you started selling a cure, capitalism is the crux of everything, and here's why: because capitalism depends on having worked in corporate management. Capitalism is creating a bed. I could make the most amazing mattress in the world that will last for 500 years, made out of materials that will be great. And yes, there are 7.8 billion people in the world, or 7.4 or whatever, and I could sell my mattress. However, at some point, I will do what is called in the corporate world as saturation of market. I will have reached all of the customers who want my mattress or who are going to buy my mattress, and then I won't have customers. So what the more likely thing is I don't want to make a mattress that will last 500 years and sell that, or cure cancer, because what I need is a customer base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mattress that'll only last 20 years. And that way, in 20 years, you will need another mattress again from me.
Well, part of that is also that people move around all the time, and investing in a 500-year mattress is not even going to sell, because
but
it'll be price prohibitive. And so,
correct.
There is an aspect of where I could see that the market would be like, oh man, we're only going to live here for about 5 years. Let's get a 5-year mattress.
So in
throw
that
it away.
aspect,
now, what the problem there is all the waste too, like that happens from this consumeristic thing.
And so the bigger thing is they don't want to cure. While they could sell cancer cures, and you are correct, there are a bunch already out, but they're hidden. They could cure it, but the problem is eventually they would run out of customers. And so capitalism ensures
and yet they could. So I'm just going to tell you, capitalists, you could instead, because this is sellable and this is a translatable thing. You can cure cancer and sell a maintenance lifestyle so that you stay cancer free as well.
Something like that. Yeah.
So there is ways to do it. They're just fucking lazy. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go there, okay? They want to sit back on their laurels and allow everybody to have problems and never actually solve the problem, ever. And like you said, that is, to me, not necessarily capitalistic. I believe in a capitalism that can help everybody, meaning, I want to do things great for the world, okay? And I want to be resourceful and compensated for that. But I don't have to like squeeze every dollar out of somebody till they're suffering, and so I can be the richest in the world or something bullshit like that. And also, I will tell you that the laws in our country are not actually pure capitalism. They are crony capitalism, because the people that have already made the money, want to keep it without having to work for it. They worked for it a long time ago, but they don't want things to change and be out of, in other words, they don't want competition coming in, because that would be true capitalism. They don't want any competition. So then they make laws so that they are always, in charge, and nobody can compete with them, and everything runs the same way for them so that they never have to change. And then small business never really gets a place to grow into those. And we also notice that any small business that does become successful ends up eventually being bought by one of these giant, corporations that, and then just shit on the whole time,
So what you're wanting, just to clarify this, I know it's a little off topic, but
it's off topic, but
the
oh well.
the society you're talking is not a capitalistic society. What you're talking about is more of, to put it towards a better reference, it's more of an egalitarian society. And
somewhat, yes.
Well, what I would point out by egalitarian would be looking at, like, a perfect example is Star Trek. Star Trek in the future, they have what's called an egalitarian society. The concept of money still exists because you have Federation credits and things, but it's not really useful for much when you have a replicator that can make things. So you're looking at, yes, money works, but it's more for the societies that don't need it. So capitalism, even capitalism in any shape or form will always lead to it will always lead to a crony capitalism.
Well, so does communism, though. That's the problem with that, because there's unfairness in that system because of the overseers thinking that,
which is why
they are the only authority for, how to distribute goods. Are you kidding me? Which
is why, like I said, capitalism won't work. You need an egalitarian society, and that's not something.
Yeah, we need egalitarian humans first. We're getting there.
Right.
It's going to happen. It's just not yet, and a lot of the old needs to die away.
Yeah.
But
so anyway,
so we have some comments now. So
yes.
Let me go ahead and go up here. So Vera Faith had said that she wants 2 bracelets. What would Bombadil do, and what would Tolkien do? And that was something that we talked about. What does the Legendarium say? So that would be kind of a what would Tolkien do? And I told her that we had my husband, when he was alive, would say, what would the elves do? And you remember that, Dave, probably, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And then she says, that was smart of your husband, and may he rest in peace. Oh, he's not resting. He's very busy on the other side, but he's doing good, though. No worries about that. Sten says, I think the thing I'm a bit uncomfortable with in this article, it seems to send the message of, we want you to work with the precious few individuals who can actually achieve Bombadil cognition. With this core sentence at the end, if you can perceive without needing to possess, if your mind rests easily with unanswered questions, you may have a place in this work.
Because so, I'm trying to create research.
Hang on, let me finish his thought. My way to approach this would be, WAL recognizes the tremendous value in Bombadil cognition and is interested in helping individuals with instruction and tools to practice doing it. This requires dedication and practice. So in other words, I guess that he got the impression, Dave, that we were looking for perfection in some sense.
Perfection doesn't exist except as a mathematical ideal.
And to answer,
I understand that, but so maybe he just needs to be clear about that.
Well, and to answer the question, Sten, I do understand where the misunderstanding could come from. We're not looking to work in a sense with only the select few, and like it says, we understand that as Dave's article wrote, that the Bombadil kind of cognitive model is not standard to most of
society.
Yeah. What we're talking about when we're talking about participating in the work is, I would say, and this is just, I'm only speaking for myself, is on the back end, on the administration and the structural creation side is what we're looking for. Because unfortunately, in the 10 years I've been with the organization, and especially the last 5-6 that I've been in the like board member level and doing the active creation, what tends to happen, and it's really disruptive, is that we get a lot of individuals who, it's not a bad thing, but they will approach and be like, "Oh, I want to come in. I want to join Dave's team. I want to join Dak's team. I want to, participate in creating the organization." And unfortunately, more of them are not. You don't need to be always in the Bombadil cognitive mode, but most of them aren't in a place where they're approaching the legendarium, the material, from that mindset. And so what happens is, instead of being a helpful to the process of what we're trying to create, it becomes a hindrance, because both Dave and I, Lisa, myself, we all have to spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to be like, no, we cannot approach it from that way, because you're trying to cookie cutter, Aleister Crowley into Tolkien's work,
or Palladian star elves, or
Palladian
whatever.
star elves. And so what ends up happening is we lose so much in creative process, because we're having to redirect the mindset and help someone train. And while I'm not opposed to doing that, when I'm in a creative mode of trying to present something that is pure to Tolkien, it's very much a hindrance for me to have to also be trying to, it's basically, to put it into an analogy, if I need a driver for my company, I want to hire someone who already has a driver's license, not someone who's never been behind the wheel of a truck, because that's counterproductive to what I'm doing. It's like, I'm not opposed to helping you get a license. I'm not opposed to helping you get your driver's license, but it's not helpful to what I'm doing if you don't know how to drive already. And that's the same thing, is we're not opposed to these people, but we need people who are already in there and will contribute in a cognitive process that already exists to expand things. But we can absolutely help create a material to get there. But on the back end of the organization, we kind of need people who are primarily already there.
Right. Well, yeah. It's like, say you wanted to start an open source project and create a new operating system. You wouldn't invite just anybody in who doesn't even know how to program. You want to hire programmers. You want to hire people who can code.
But you don't need to hire a programmer that'll only think in a certain programming way either, like, because that would not be, a good thing.
Correct.
They need to be open to.
But it would depend on the project, though. If you want an actual operating system, you want somebody who can code in C++ or Rust. You don't want somebody who codes in BASIC. That's not going to work.
Exactly.
Or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it wasn't
and that makes
intended
sense, like meaning that it has to be certain operating systems.
Yeah.
Okay, which makes sense.
Yeah, it wasn't intended to come off as like elitist or exclusionary at all. It was
that it wasn't meant that way, but I think that what it is that this is our ideal as well. Like, we realize that it's a big call, but also it's also something to strive for all of us. Like, hell, I was telling you guys earlier that I straddle between B and D all the time. So, and I live in B a lot because of my job. So,
and probably probably most of the people who view this video, they're simply not interested in that, and they just want to watch our
That might
videos,
be the case.
and
That might
maybe
be the
only
case. Yeah.
maybe only lightly interested in Tolkien and don't want to read his books because I'm satisfied with Rings of Power or whatever. Well, that's
Or
fine for
whatever it
them,
is. Yeah.
but it's
That
not fine for
definitely
us.
wouldn't work.
Yeah.
That definitely wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Vera Faith says, Sten and all of this is a way above me, but it doesn't mean it isn't something that I can strive for. It is just my opinion. And Sten then said, sorry if I created the impression that I'm putting you down, Vera Faith. That actually is the opposite of what I was attempting to say. I actually don't consider myself very good at yet things talked about here. I definitely don't think I'm better at this than you. I find these practices difficult. I'm trying to learn. I'm sorry if I created the wrong impression. And Vera Faith says, I didn't feel put down. I'm sorry if I gave that impression. Okay, so I am trying to learn also. It seems like we are all on the same path. Exactly. That is exactly where we were going, is that this is not a normal human thing in our culture. It may have been normal in prior, like, cultures of tribalism and shamanism and, all of these things to allow things to be what they are. But in our culture, we're taught that everything has to have a use and everything, we're taught this from the minute we're born. So it's really hard to decondition that per se.
From some of the observable evidence, like with cave art, it was pretty common 30,000 years ago, but then again, that was 30,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and I would even say just it's been this way, like as far as like useful things for quite a while in Western culture. I don't think that it's only been in the last 100 years. I think that it's been that way for quite a while. Like there's definitely resource, emphasis, management, all of those types of things. These things are all, wars are caused by, there's all kinds of things. And we can even go as far as like, the bankers and then financing both sides of the war and then the countries fighting each other. And then they both make, they both end up like paying more money to these people. And, oh, wow, that has like, really run its course right now. Like we're really seeing this and all of the stuff that's going on with that. How do we solve it is a different problem. But my point is that, yes, we've had these messages like drilled into our heads ever since youth. Okay. And a lot of that is because, we're supposed to be like working in the cog and getting a paycheck and, doing all of this stuff, right?
That's one thing, see, I can only write from my own experience, and my personal experience was I was never in the overculture.
It was never like that for you.
I was always the outsider and rejected, so I rejected other people in turn. So I can only write from my own experience,
Right. And also, I also want to say that while it may not always be evident in the videos that we do, Vera Faith, back to the comment of, all of this is way above me, but it doesn't mean it isn't something that, I can't strive for. To be another thing that often I see from outside, and again, this is my own appearance, people will look at someone and be like, oh man, these guys have got this down. The reality is that even the teacher is always learning. So myself, I can't speak for Dave and Lisa, but even these mindsets, even the things we teach on, I'm constantly learning something new or having to work on something. So it's not like it's something that you can achieve and then you're just like, I walk around in this state all the time. No, it's even from our area. I've done occult studies for 25 years. But I'm constantly learning, or my guides are constantly coming to me and going, hey, dummy, you really need to work on this aspect because you suck at it. So It's
Well, and also,
it's constantly, you know, it's not something that it's like, oh, we've achieved this. It's where we sit all the time. No, we're
also,
constantly learning ourselves.
Not to mention, I
and
don't know too many corporations that are like, oh, wow, you do this really well. It's more like, you do this really shitty. What's wrong with you? Like, it's like
and
kind of like that, right?
and even for me as the chief mythic engineer, the architect, you might say, I respond to what other people. I respond to the way other people respond to our videos. If I didn't care anything how it was perceived at all, I wouldn't put anything online at all. I just write for myself, and no one would ever see it. But
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because we're interested in making a system that is meaningful for other people, we also respond to their input. So
Yeah. And by the way, Sten, I just want to add that I think that you've done a lot of great input by topics to talk about.
Absolutely.
We
Mhm.
actually think that you have great ideas, and that's what gives us a lot of video ideas. So please don't stop that, okay? I'm
Yeah.
trying to be the opposite of a corporate asshole right now, okay? Where it's
Well,
like, we're not here to like, oh, you suck at this or whatever. We're here to say, no, this, like, we do see value in that because we realize, oh, wow, we don't think about it because, we're kind of, sometimes we're in our own world too and can't see like what needs to be out
and
there in the
we're
community. I think that
right.
it's wonderful that you have an eye for that.
Yeah. So
So
we're always
keep
learning
telling us
ourselves.
what videos to make. And on that note, we're going to be hopefully at some point making a video on all of the Valar, and also pointing out that we don't mix, if you will, pantheons together. Like, there's some eclectic pagan types out there that love to mix pantheons together, like
Well, and we're
somebody
gonna,
in the Egyptian pantheon, somebody in the Hindu pantheon, and they'll just mix it together like a soup. Okay,
Well, and Sten gave
we're
us a
not going to be
great
doing that.
Sten gave us a great idea, but on top of going into each of the Valar, we're also going to be looking at, in that video, I'm working on the presentation at the moment. Well, not right now, but I'm working on
Not
it
right
as a
this
whole.
minute. Yeah.
Of why the Valar are not, you know, the Greek, or why they aren't just simple counterparts to the Greek,
Right, to the
or the
deities
Norse,
or
or to the
archangels. Like, there's a
Celtic.
bunch of things
So
that are
yeah,
like compared. Yeah.
yeah, that was a topic that Sten brought up, and it's a fantastic one because it's something that I wouldn't have considered. I kind of just, sometimes I get in the mindset of, oh, well, this is obvious to me, so it's obvious to everyone else. And I have to remember that. And then someone like Sten comes along and goes, hey, this would be a great video. And I start looking and going, oh, wait, maybe what's obvious to me isn't obvious to everyone else. So it's a fantastic topic because it promotes a ton of growth and gives us a place to produce material.
Yeah, and it gives us a place to serve some of the people that like we didn't even think about, like, because it's not even occurring to us. With, keep in mind, and especially Dave has been doing it all of his life, but I've been definitely doing this for 20 years, and I'm probably taking a lot for granted. Okay, so and not deliberately. I'm just talking about like just how it is. So I sometimes forget that beginner mindset. So I think that it's terrific that, and not only that, Sten, but you do it in a way that like you're descriptive enough in order to like really like get the essence of like what it is that our video needs to be about.
Exactly.
And I think that is like totally valuable. And so if you are feeling like, oh, like I'm not valuable because I don't think this way, oh my God, no, that's not it. But you are also not in Dave's research team either. So, Dave is looking for this in his research team. And, he knows that it's like a dart being thrown into, like a giant mountain, like, about like what to hit, right? But it's worth shooting the dart. Like, you never know what you'll find. So I'm going to go through the comments because we've had some come up. And I've tried to highlight them as I go, but I'll read them now. So Nimue says, it sounds like what is being looked for is someone who approaches with a respect for the legendarium as it stands and a willingness to explore and expand while retaining the integrity of the Tolkien perspective, letting
That's
it
exactly
sit
it.
and
Yeah,
not wanting to
100%.
twist what comes up, witnessing the mythology and allowing the expansion of it when it shows up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly,
That is
100%.
correct. Okay. So Faith says, you're welcome. I'm interested in this topic, but all of this is new to me. I come from a Christian background and we don't hear this in my church. Oh, I would imagine.
I
we are just fully like transparent truth bombing you. Like we don't have any agendas behind the, like, you know, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's not what's going on.
100%, Vera. I myself, as in my
Yeah,
introduction
prior
video,
Christian. Yeah, you left that whole
I
thing.
haven't done it since I haven't been in that environment since I was like 13, 14 years old. But no, I completely understand that coming from a fundamental kind of Christian background, this is not topics that they delve into. This is not, everything has to be explained. Everything has to be, you know, connected. And if it can't be,
well,
then it's
all
just
control.
a mysterious.
Yeah.
Well, and if it can't be, then the number of times that looking back, I asked questions, and if they didn't know the answer, it was just, well, God's mysterious. Who knows?
Oh,
So,
right.
so
blame it
this
on
is
mystery.
so this is definitely, I understand
Wow.
having to decondition the mindset of don't ask questions, because questions equal doubt and faith, and a doubt and faith is a huge no-no. So exactly, no, I understand.
So she continues. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's a difference between being, I suppose, faith-based and mythologically based. Those are two different things.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Faith continues and says, I have to say Rings of Power was too much work for me, because when I was watching it, I would say, wait, what did it say in the Silmarillion? Exactly.
And they don't
like,
want that.
This sucks. Yeah, exactly.
They
oh my gosh.
That. They
That's
don't want
so
you
funny.
to look at it and be like, well, what's the Legendarium say? Hey, wait a minute. Celebrimbor wasn't a bumbling idiot.
Exactly.
My secret term for it, well, not really secret. I mean, I've told Lisa and DeKendra about it, but I call it, instead of rings of power, I call it Rangs of Prime.
Right. As in Prime Video, because they're Prime at, like, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway. So Sten says, thanks. I also want to point out Faith's thoughtful contributions throughout this video and ones that went before. And then she says, thanks, Sten. And then she says, even worse, Catholic. Yeah, there's a lot of guilt that it rides in Catholic religion. That's for sure. Definitely. Yeah. So you're actually discouraged from thinking, because thinking is actually like pretty sinful in their religion. It seems like I think that you're not allowed to think, you know.
Not really. You are, at least from the churches I went to, thinking is not what we are to do. We were not, asking questions is not a good thing. Like I said, asking questions is actually what got me kicked out at like 9 years old. I was told don't bring back, because I was simply trying to understand what I believed, if I'm going to believe it. And questions, I was literally told by my pastor that questions will cause doubt. Doubt will cause a lapse of faith. And that is not what we are intended to do. We are merely supposed to accept what is already written in a literal sense. And that is that. You do not try to interpret it. You do not ask questions. This is what it is, and this is why it is, and that is that.
But The thing that's really interesting about that is if you go to the Middle Ages, a lot of those monks that would that write various treaties and so forth, they were intellectually powerful. So something happened between the Middle Ages and the modern era, to dumb them down, or maybe dumbing the whole species down. I don't know, but nevertheless, there was almost no comparison with intellectual primacy in those days.
Don't get me started about my church questions when I was a kid. I wasn't, thankfully, I wasn't shoved into church. It was like things I was invited to. My parents they had already done the questioning of the church and left it a long time ago. So I went like with other friends and stuff. And then I would be like, so wait a minute, what about this, this, this? And then they would be like, oh, we don't ask those questions. And then I'm like, okay. And then I'd go home and talk to my mom, and then she'd be like, do you see why I don't go to church? So that was my family conversation. Their Faith says you should not watch Rings of Power unless okay, we're going to stop and just say you should not watch Rings of Power. We'll just put a period.
Well,
there's no,
seriously.
There is any of this. This is just not even a thing. It's not even a thing. It's not even Tolkien.
Well, and you know what's bad about it? It contaminated the whole internet sphere.
It really did.
With their crap. And now there's a whole bunch of AI-generated channels that say shit like Gandalf and Elrond were really secret lovers! Triple exclamation
or some
point.
Shit like that. Yeah.
And they just pass it off as if it's truth, and then of course the people who don't know anything about Tolkien said they really were lovers. Oh man, that's cool! What a cool story! Of course it doesn't have anything to do with Tolkien. It's some fan fiction, but nevertheless.
Exactly. So we're just gonna abbreviate your whole sentence there. Sorry. Like, don't watch Rings of Power. Period. There you go. We're just going to save you a bunch of time because it's literally not Tolkien. They bought the names of the world so that they could do whatever the hell they wanted. And I mean, I'm sad that Tolkien took all of the money for that. And then it was allowed to like really ruin the world for other things. But the magic that I am doing in the world of Rings of Prime, as Dave calls it, is I am wanting that energy to transmute and find people who really care about Tolkien mythology and that they may have gotten introduced to it from a shitty vehicle, meaning Rings of Power, because, it's on TV when their parents are out of the room or whatever, and kids or whatever, and they go, wow, it'd be really cool to read Tolkien. Yes. When you read Tolkien, it's a whole different level. And for the right people, it will resonate and things will come back. So I'm transmuting it into that Amazon has a shitty attempt at converting people who are truly mythological minded, and we're going to use their advertising as a way to get the people. That's how I feel about it.
You have a much higher opinion of humans than I do. I'm much more Dalek.
I know it's a very small minority, but all we need is one. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
If we save one person from Rings of Prime hell, okay, then we did our job. Because one person can radiate out into the world and do so much. So, no, I think that there is no wasted effort there in transmuting their bullshit, okay? And we can use it as our own advertising, okay, to get people that are interested in the mythology, okay? So, it looks like Vera Faith, I have actually come from a Catholic background too, and running into wrestling with all this new stuff. I don't talk about wrestling though usually, but I'm learning. Oh yeah, exactly. Because yeah, that's a whole culture with Catholicism. And yeah, Vera Faith has some stories. She could tell you. these are okay, so Sten says these are situations that DeKindre talked about very interestingly in the video about deconditioning mindsets. He also talked about these things in his interview video, if you ever want to watch that. So he did a video about his background. So just letting you know that you may want to check that out. Okay. Nimue says, I didn't grow up in an organized religion. Thankfully, neither did I, which gives me a very different perspective on things from what I hear others who would talk about. It makes me grateful that I didn't. Me too. Me too. I would come home and go, yeah, Mom, those people at church wanted me to, get saved or whatever, like whatever their agenda was. And then I'd be like, so what's that about? And then they would be like, it's Jesus Christ in your soul. And I'm like, but I need to study more about that, in order to allow something to come into my, like, really? Like, we're talking about personal sovereignty and responsibility and inner authority, right? And they were like, no, just trust it. It's good. Like, you'll be saved. You'll be saved. And I'm like, okay. And then I remember that, like, when I said, okay, I'll look at it. And then they were all, yay, Lisa's saved. Oh my God. Like, they were like all partying. And I'm like, these people are fucking whack jobs, man. I'm 12 years old. Right?
My experience on that was a little bit different in the sense that my mom was a devout Lutheran Missouri Synod, which is kind of like the more Orthodox branch. On the other hand, she was also an alcoholic at the same time, and it's hard to convert people with a wine glass in one hand. So, I
yeah, especially if that's part of it. Well, and actually, isn't that a contradiction of the religion too? Like, they don't condone alcoholism.
Well, I don't think most Christian sects condone alcoholism, but she just was, so,
and that's what I'm talking about. Like, they talk about, like, that your God shouldn't be alcohol. It should be, it should be God, right?
Yeah, but
then I know that they talk about Jesus turning water to wine. So I guess that there's their excuse. I don't know. I don't know about that. Most of the religions that I was involved in when I was a kid, like, they look down upon addiction at all, like, of any kind, because they felt that it was a weakness. And in some ways, I mean, I guess it could be.
Yeah, but I think that from what I remember,
both weaknesses. Okay, do we even need to go there?
From what I remember, that was probably generally true, but just like any other system, the whole human element goes in, and people do what they do, whether they're religious or not.
Shoot, I think that I missed this comment. I apologize. Vera Faith says, Stin, I grew up Protestant and converted in 2004, meaning to Catholicism. So now I am really confused. Okay, so and by the way, we don't want to like muddle the waters here as far as if you're not, if you're not like in that alignment, there's other roles that we have in like in the Way of Arda's lore that are useful for, like Dave is actually just talking about what is useful in his project. Okay, towards
in the R&D
what
mythic first, I call it. Yeah,
exactly. The research and development part. And yeah, you guys might not be that, and that's okay. But like, you have value here, and we don't want it to be like where, oh no, like my mind is blown, and we don't, like no, like that's okay. We have roles. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay. Let's see. We have. Okay, we already talked about that. Okay, so Nimue says, I wasn't even baptized, gasp, LOL. I was as a Catholic, but as a baby, like, I'm sure that, like, I had all the cognizance in the world as a baby, right? Like, being Catholic baptized. I mean, what a joke. Jokes aside, I have had positive experiences in many paths, and I'm not intending to put down anyone's journey. Oh yeah, neither us.
I think
we all
sorry.
choose our pathways regardless, even when we come in, you know, to the souls and the families that we have and the cultures. These are all part of our experience so that we can learn about ourselves. I really believe that.
As I remember from what my mom told me, I was baptized, but I became a Sith Lord, so I guess it didn't pay.
That's funny.
That force field didn't work.
That's great. I guess by the definition of the Catholic Church, maybe? Not my definition. Yeah. So that was my father. He was very definitely Roman Catholic, and my mom was like, okay, fine, we'll baptize her because you and your family want it. But my mom was not really a fan of baptizing me. I'll tell you that. That was my dad.
Well, and see, I didn't know that was your prior church, Lisa. So or at least what you were raised in.
It really wasn't. Yeah. I was a baby, and my mom wasn't even in favor of it. So when they got divorced, and that was very early on, I mean, I hardly ever went into a Catholic church. And when I did, I was like, what the hell is this? I mean, you know what I mean?
It's interesting. It's interesting because Lutheranism was the first Protestant religion, with Martin Luther and his,
yes.
But what Martin Luther did, now the regular Lutherans won't talk about this because it would be like dissing their religion or whatever. But what he did was being a Catholic priest, he ported all the Catholic, liturgy and writings and stuff over. He did in IT, he basically ported the whole operating system and then created a new version, so he forked it.
So Their Faith says, that is what they teach. So literally that babies are Catholic, even if when they grow up, and like literally when I was 12, I knew it wasn't for me. Okay. And by the way, I did look at the Christ consciousness energy, that always meant something to me and still can mean something to me. I just have better resonation with other types of energy, but I think that it's a valid energy. But I have just never been a churchianity kind of person. I felt like the whole thing was bullshit. So, okay. So then we have, come on. There we go. Sten says this proverb liberated me a lot. And he quotes, any experience can be a tool to open up a new path, unquote. I've heard to trust my curious and searching mind, and this has released a lot of blocks for me. Exactly. Oh, I love the curiosity and the learning aspect. Absolutely. And to do it with you don't throw it to the wild abandon or anything. I do get that it's about traversing that in a way that's healthy, but yeah, that's great. Okay, I already did that one. And Nimue says, my dad used to call himself a non-attendarian. I can't say that. Non-attendarian. Oh, wow. That's funny. I would be saying churchianity. I don't buy it. I am not a churchianity person. And my daughter, who I named Christiana, actually tells people, when she says her belief system, she says it's Christianity.
Hey man, if we were talking about churchianity, if I wanted to see and be seen, I would have been a rock star. Unfortunately, I have no musical talent, so damn it.
Well, neither did Gerald Gardner. He started a religion. Hey, here we are. And by the way, we did start a religion, but we're not predatory to women and making them naked in circles. So, hey, we're just lacking in this area, I guess.
I'd be embarrassed. I'd have to wear my codpiece so no one could actually tell what the real length was.
give everybody the wrong idea. Oh, there's that whole external trappings again, like to make an impression, right?
In Papua New Guinea, they have these ones that are like 3 feet long, so you really can't tell. So
Wow.
it's
And don't they have like yohimbe or some other like herbal drugs that like
but I mean, it's
or whatever?
it's about 3 feet long, and they have to tie it on with like special thongs and whatnot just to get the thing to balance right.
Wow, 3 feet long. Oh, I don't even want to think about that. Oh, it's like that would kill you or something. Anyway. Yeah. Oh, sex and death. Maybe they are related, huh? Anyway.
Well, that's why the tribespeople the dudes walk in a very stately manner, because they can't run. There might be an accident.
That's like the equivalent of women having to wear like bras while they run, right? So that it doesn't bounce all around.
And they're very stately, slow manner, because something might happen.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Well, we're getting completely off topic now, but anyway, we are done with the presentation.
Yeah.
It's been a lively conversation this afternoon. We're really happy about that. And so yeah, we're just here, like we're looking for people for Dave's R&D research, but we also value what you already bring to the path, and that is yourself and your curiosity. And we definitely welcome that. And even people who are like, visiting our channel for the first time, and you're like, what are we about? We are about the mythological meanings of Tolkien's work that we believe has been either shamanically brought forth or channeled in a fashion from, and also the languages, etc. Okay, we talked about this in other videos, but you might be visiting for the first time, because I'm looking at the corner. We have about 6 people on, so there's definitely some people that haven't commented, which is totally fine. You are absolutely welcome to check us out. If you want more information about us, we have lots of videos for you to look at. You can look at the Ainu Lindale series that we have. You can see if you're a match with us, like about how we view spiritually the material, just from that series. No mailing list necessary. We do have some free gifts if you do want to be on the mailing list or in the Patreon, free or paid for, depending on what level you're comfortable with, your contribution towards, and then staying informed. And I will be honest with you, I keep the Patreon free list informed a lot more often, because I'm already there and I may as well, keep everybody informed. Where our mailing list software, which is MailChimp, is like becoming impossible to use. And so I don't send out email as much on that. We're not here to market to you anyway, because that's the point of MailChimp, is marketing and money and all of this crap. Okay. That's not what we're about. We're about community, and certainly cash flow is nice for some things like, paying for, like the fees for like making our new nonprofit when the time for that comes.
Websites,
it's useful for websites.
Things.
It's useful for, like our admin bills, I guess, like for things that we need. Yeah,
but
we're just really, really happy that you guys are all here. And we really value you and your contributions, and we are so grateful. Sten says, yes, this unpacking of Bombadil cognition was very interesting. I think it's pretty clear that us here feel drawn to begin exercising on it. Yeah, I think so too. And I think that even even though I already align with part of that, I think I may kind of experience that rebalancing again, in order to make sure that I'm not too wrapped into the storytelling aspect, because I can be that, because I'm an astrologer. That's just my job, So there is that. So We're going to end the video here pretty soon. Nimue, I guess we'll email each other about some stuff, and then I think that we're going to be getting some new art from you, pardon me, for the following month, which is the Moon of Heat, and we do the Ainur, and that should be a very interesting piece of art. So we'll talk about that. And I think that we're gonna be done for the evening.
Yeah.
So thank you all for coming. We very much appreciate it. Dave and Dekindre, did you want to say goodbye, or in any way, like new notes?
Not that I can think of, other than what we might have coming up for upcoming videos. I did have my Dark Ages one that I wrote.
Yes, we have that one. So the Dark Ages, we have the Valar one, and eventually we're going to do the Tolkien and channeling one. And if I can figure out, not how to use AI, because I don't want to, but maybe one of you guys that has AI, like that wants to help me figure out the Elven symbolism, because I have some things, I have some symbols, and I have that paper that I had started to write, and it would be really great to flesh that out and make that a video.
Oh, I also have, I just want to say, I also have one more paper that I don't think I've discussed with either of you guys that much, but I in my 4.5 months odyssey with trying all kinds of different Linux distributions, I wrote a paper called The Cult of Dev: Hollow Wizards of the New Machine Age. And I said a few Way of Artists Love patrons have asked if Linux is a salvation from Windows 10 end of life. To quote Ariel from the Lost Tales, a great tale hangs there too. And you'll just have to wait until later to hear the great tale.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that one would be a really like sideline special interest one. You know, like it might not be like for everybody in the Tolkien world, but definitely people that like are tech oriented might really enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Very good. And needless to say, I think you need to make it in your HackMD articles in any case, so that it's more public. So yeah. You have some other ones that I think that I have in the back end of my stuff that need to be in HackMD as well. I'll go over that with you another day.
Okay.
I've got a lot of people. It's 2:44 here. I got a lot of people that are like, "Hey, Lisa, I want your deal. This is the $100, 90-minute deal of astrology that I'm currently running that I've never ran before in the 30 years that I've been doing astrology." So, and it's because I want to fix my car before I go to Arizona, and I just want it done. You know what I mean? So, it's just one of those things. So I'm kind of swamped this afternoon, but I did want to get back with Nimue about like the art and some other things, and then also with either. Let's see, Dekindre, I think I've gotten you set up. Like we're not at the place where we're ready to do the new organization yet. We are, and also, the other thing that we talked about the other day, like we got that all straightened out and everything's fine with that, right? Okay. And then Dave, yeah, we need to go over, I guess, a new list for the videos that are coming up, and then sort out like what we've done already, what isn't really relevant anymore, what is more relevant, things like that. We can go over that.
And then, yeah, right now I'm working on.
And if you guys have any videos that you want to see done, please put it. You can put it in the comments. You can put it in the live chat. You can also send us a message on Facebook, Instagram. Send us an email. My email is elvenspirituality@gmail.com. Dave and Dekindre have email as well. Just letting you guys know, like, that there's ways. Oh, and on Patreon, you can send a message there too, and I will get it, whether you're a free member or whether you are a paid member. And paid members, so like you guys might be going, what's the difference between the free member and the paid member? The paid members get like things that are going to be more energetically like contained in a circle of energy that is much more like aligned with that particular grouping of people. so that, you know, like if we're doing rituals or something, like we won't have any distraction energy, like with public ritual type stuff that we have. We do have public rituals too, but for private rituals, which we're going to be doing hopefully pretty soon again, we're trying to get our memes and other things like up and running and stuff like that. And plus, like, it would be nice if I sat still for a minute, but that's not happening yet. But at some point we're going to be having a private, like, you know, ritual, and it would just be for the paid Patreon participants, so that the circle is smaller, it's more intimate, the energy is more clean, it's just easier to access. And that's really the benefit of having the clean energy right now. Later, when Dekindre is able to put out the class protocols and the hierarchies of, like, you know, the titles and all of that stuff, like, it'll have much more benefits for that. But for right now, it's just an energetic integrity, like when we're working with spiritual stuff right now, so that the energy stays cleaner than what it does when we're doing public stuff. So that's really it. And so Nimue says, take care, everyone. And Veriface says, thanks for the live. It was great and educating. So we're going to get going here. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful evening, afternoon, weekend, like whatever is happening for you. Have a wonderful month. Like, we're in the warm season right now. It's really excellent. And I guess it's going to get warmer, and especially in places like Arizona, like where Nimue and Draco are. So yeah, very good. Hey, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful time, and we'll see you again, and stay tuned. Okay.
Absolutely. We'll see everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, everyone.